Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It's Thursday, April 17th, 2025. I'm your host, George Kurt, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. We're almost there, finally, to the NFL draft. How you doing, Cody?
I'm doing great. 1 week out, got my draft hat on. We're talking running backs today, which is a very fascinating part of the class. Getting ready for our mock draft next week. Great time to be alive. Great time to be talking to you.
Thank you. It's a great time to be talking to you, too. Cody, you teach me a lot of things on the show. I'm sure you teach the viewers a lot of things, too. So, I mean, I know my stuff, but you're the draft guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just more interested in it. And, having college football back this year was a big help. Gets to play with some of these guys, especially the running backs that we're talking about. And as always, we're going to have a little bit of a fantasy twist, which is why I think when we did wide receivers a couple weeks ago, we're doing running backs today. When we're talking dynasty and redraft, some of these names will be names that we're going to pay attention to more so than others. So definitely a fun conversation coming up.
Definitely is. Make sure you're following us at the Couch GMs on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok to get more than even more than you do from the show, or join the discussion on anything that we post, anything we talk about here. Live Thursdays at 6:30 East, except for next week because the draft is next Thursday. We're actually going to be posting an episode Wednesday night next week, so make sure you're checking out that for Cody's mock draft that he mentioned. We'll remind you on our social medias as well, so give us a follow. Hit that bell if you're watching us on YouTube so you get notifications. But why don't we jump right in to a busy episode? What's happening? News came out over last weekend that Derek Carr is expected to miss time, if not the entire 2025 season, due to a shoulder injury. Now, while we're kind of on the side of I don't know how impactful Derek Carr is at this point, the Saints have been better with him. And with this coming right before the draft, I don't want you to tip your hand too much maybe on your mock draft, but how does this change their strategy going into the NFL draft next week?
No, it definitely was a thing that caught me off guard. Was not expecting to see Derek Carr potentially missing for the season. And I'm fascinated to see if he ends up getting it because it's very, there's not a lot of optimism, but it hasn't been concluded yet. And to your point with the draft, they have the number 9th pick. I know Shedeur Sanders is going to be a name that people will talk about. Like, could this be a blessing in disguise? But the Saints are also in cap purgatory.
Mm-hmm.
Does Shedeur's group even want him to go there? Does he try to push his way out of New Orleans? Did they do enough pre-draft on Shedeur? Or are they trying to do that all right now? It's a very interesting, fascinating. It'll be one of the key points on the draft when we talk about it, as my cat walks across the screen. So check us out on YouTube at the Couch GMs. You want to see our new honorary mascot.
You're gonna have a great time here in this episode. I can already tell.
Of course.
But we'll keep an eye out on what any news we get on Derek Carr before the draft, and if we hear any talks on where the Saints may be going. And you'll have to watch our mock draft episode next week to see where Cody believes they're going to be going. But somebody who you are very close with, being with your hat, hashtag Rodgers watch. Aaron Rodgers was on Pat McAfee on Thursday, and he had a lot to say about the process of going through trying to find his next team. If he's close, if it's going to take some time. What were some of the highlights that stood out to you?
Yeah, so basically, he was on Pat McAfee today, and it was 45 minutes of not a lot. He basically said he's still considering. He needs to focus on personal. Right now, he needs to focus on taking care of his inner circle. He reiterated that some of the narratives out there that he's holding people hostage is far from the truth. Listening to it, reading between the lines, which is always a very tough thing to do with Aaron Rodgers. Definitely think it sounds like it's retire or play with the Steelers. Maybe something comes in as of late down. He mentioned being close to Kevin O'Connell, so maybe there is something down the line after OTAs for the Minnesota.
All right, Cody, check your mic. Make sure everything comes back. I think what you're saying here, yeah, I'm curious if the reason that they haven't come to a deal, meaning him and the Steelers, is because he's holding out to see if there's a situation with the Vikings or another team that's a contender that comes up, because he did mention he's going to play for a contender or he's going to retire. And there's not many contenders out there looking for somebody like him. unless something crazy happens in the offseason. So I wonder if it's that or if it's just the Steelers aren't committed, because he had a meeting with the Steelers over 2 weeks ago, and then there's been basically no contact since. So I'm interested to see what side of it is, and if the NFL draft really does affect it, even though he said it wasn't anything that would affect it on his end. You back, Cody?
Am I back? I don't know.
It's
It
back.
sounds like I'm back. All right, perfect. Sorry about that for sure. But yeah, definitely you hit the nail on the head. He wants to it honestly sounds like he doesn't know, and he just really wanted to, kill some of the narratives out there, and he wanted to do a little bit of bashing of the Jets, how they handled the situation. But we don't need to go into that. I'm sure by now you've got enough notifications, or you can go watch the Pat McAfee clip if you want more up to date on Aaron Rodgers.
And obviously, if anything comes out with that, we will let you know ASAP. But I think that's all the news we have for this week. Not a whole lot outside the draft going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some, small deals, players and stuff like that, those fringe frees that won't mean anything, but just right now you'll see a couple of those as teams try to limit the amount of true needs that they have so they don't have to pigeonhole themselves into any particular position when it comes to the draft. So some little deals, but nothing major to report on.
All right, Cody. So why don't we start talking about running backs and do a little bit of draft talk? Something about that sound effect just feels right.
Hopefully, we don't get copyrighted, but
hopefully not. But if we do, stick with us. We're all good. A lot of running backs in this class that are worth noting. And that's something that's completely different than we've seen over the last few years. And it seems like the running back position has been rebounding, and it shows right here with a very strong class. So I'm interested to jump into a lot of these guys and see maybe where you think some fits are, or just all the different niches that these guys fit.
yeah, and I think that's the important thing. There is a lot of niche players, and then you have players like the first guy we're going to talk about. And by this point, you're probably blue in the face. Ashton Jeanty, runner up for the Heisman, best running back in college football last year. If you didn't get a chance to check out, he posted an article in the Players Tribune. Basically, was like, I'm going to do what Saquon did for the Eagles. It's called tackle football. Take someone that can't be tackled. Like, definitely living it up for the fans. Pretty much a consensus top 10 pick. It's just going to be how high does a running back go for Ashton Jeanty.
Exactly. And I mean, there's plenty of teams out there, I think, that would take a running back in the first round, but it depends on who's willing to take that jump that early. We've seen it over the past few years with some teams doing it, with Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, etc. Do you have any idea where you're feeling he might go? Couple positions, maybe couple places?
I think anywhere from 5 to 11. I would say actually 5 to 12. 12's the Cowboys. There's no way he gets past Dallas. I don't think he'll be there for Dallas, but I would say 5 to 12, starting with the Jacksonville Jaguars, ending with the Dallas Cowboys, is the Ashton Jeanty range. And I know we're going to do the mock draft for next week's show. We'll see where he goes there. But I did think it was interesting too when you're looking at these guys. He is on the New York Times big board. Dane Brugler, he does every year. It's called the Beast. It's an incredible amount of prospects. But their top 100 ranks him as the number 3 overall prospect behind Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, which is not surprising.
Wow.
I think that's where a lot of people would have him. He's number 5 on PFF's big board. But because we did just do the fantasy best player bracket in March, I did think it was interesting that on the New York Times is comparing Ashton Jeanty to LaDainian Tomlinson with his balance, instinct, and versatility. So definitely is the guy. And honestly, I don't think there's a situation where he's not the 101 in Dynasty drafts picks this year.
I agree. And the only big difference about it in my mind is not that, oh, running back going 101. You always end up seeing that top end running back prospect going 101 in Dynasty. It's the fact that you have 2, maybe 3, 4 other running back prospects, depending on where they get drafted to, that can be solid top of the first half of the first round Dynasty picks.
You could honestly make an argument, and again, not to what Travis Hunter does, I think would be a big part of that. But even with the talk of him playing both ways, you could argue that the first 3 picks in Dynasty are going to be running backs this year.
And I
Like
mean, you and I have been playing Dynasty together since 2017 or 2018, and that's
a
never
while.
happened in any of our Dynasty drafts.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I think the the one to compare the most to was the Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers. I forget who else was in that draft, but there was a lot of running backs in that one. But that was 4 or 5 years ago. So definitely a rebound. And there's not the elite top wide receiver, I would say, in this class, at least in terms of fantasy. But the next guy that you should definitely pay attention to or know his name. Sorry for the cat bumping the mic once again. Omarion Hampton from the University of North Carolina. Definitely, he's another complete player. He's been compared to guys of the like of Alvin Kamara. Hint, hint on maybe where he might go in the mock draft next week.
Huh.
But out of North Carolina, reliable, 6 foot, 220 pounds, passes the ball well, but is a reliable running back. Honestly, he gives me he doesn't give me Jahmyr Gibbs vibes, but when it comes, I think there is a chance that he goes higher than people think. Thinking back to just a couple years ago when Bijan Robinson was a clear top 10 pick, and then everyone thought it was a shock that Jahmyr Gibbs went 12 overall to the Detroit Lions. I would not be surprised if we see a similar situation with Hampton and Jeanty this year.
Definitely, even though it is a deeper class, like there's still definitely that top end talent. I think there's actually probably at least one other guy I would put in that top group of two, and I don't know if you'd agree or not. We'll see when we get down to there. But both of these guys are just 3-down backs. They have versatility. They can play in the pass game. They can play in the run game. That's what's going to make the big difference with having them go this high. That and the fact that we saw a team dominate with the run game this year, go on and win a championship. We've seen a lot of these running backs that were powerhouse running backs go to new teams and be successful. And the game that was, just starting to limit the deep passing game on defense, teams are realizing they need that high volume running back again to try to keep up with the new way of the NFL as we start to adjust.
Yeah, and I think with Omarion and Ashton, they are your top two. They're probably the only two going in the first round. Maybe another guy sneaks into the end of the first round, but that doesn't mean there isn't going to be value when it comes to fantasy. And then it's going to be about fits, who complements who versus, which team likes a runner of this style. Do you prefer more of a downhill? Do you want a pass catcher, more elusive kind of guy? I think there's some interesting names there, but I'm interested on who you think is the third person in that guy, or next person up, or the third person in this list.
Do you want me to name it instead of going in your order here?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So next guy, and maybe it's because I have a little bit more exposure, but I've seen a lot of great things, is TreVeyon Henderson. He's my next guy up on my list because I've seen a lot of versatility out of him, and he can take over a game. Like obviously he won a national title too. That doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's getting a little bit of, not as much love because he already was in a split carry the last season when they won the championship with Quinshawn Judkins. But yeah, I was surprised that he is number 4 on running backs for the New York Times, and he is number 59th overall for PFF.
Wow.
I have him as RB3. They have some other guys ahead of him. I'm with you. I think he's the guy that could sneak into the end of the first round. And this is what I was talking about with compliments. Like, I would love to see TreVeyon Henderson matched up in a backfield with Isaiah Pacheco and the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that would be a great pairing, right? Like, I don't think, he's not obviously going to go there. I don't know if I think he's the best fit for a team like the Chicago Bears, who has a DeAndre Swift there. They're kind of more on the similar kind of play styles. So that's the kind of thing. When you get to him, it's kind of like, where do you balance him? Because he did dominate in a split role where he can play all 3 downs, but he was not the primary power guy. Quinshawn was, but they both have elusive speed. And I like TreVeyon Henderson a lot there. And I think he is the guy that could sneak into the first round, top of the early second. And honestly, to your point, if you're sitting with pick 103 in your upcoming Dynasty draft thinking I'm going to miss out on these 2 guys, that's probably where I'm leaning here on April 17th.
Yeah, and obviously, depending on fit, we're going to have a Dynasty mock draft coming up after the NFL draft as well. So make sure you're tuned in for that to hear a lot more when we know more. But yeah, no, when it comes to I think overall boom ability, he's definitely third best, and we're just hoping he goes into a good spot. But I do think if he goes in the first round, like you said, it's going to be a team that's like, I have the compliment to him, and he's one of our last pieces, which I think that'll be good too, because he's more than likely going to go near the end of the first round to a contender.
Yeah, or he'll be paired up, with a guy in the, I talked about 10 through 15 or 5 through 15 being the Ashton Jeanty range. Well, they all can't get Ashton Jeanty. Can they start to get these guys? Could they get a TreVeyon Henderson there? Could they go for his counterpart in Quinshawn Judkins, who is another good player, 6 foot, only 21 years old, but is more north and south, up and down, but has a little bit of explosiveness to his game, converting that speed to power. And then another guy that, I'm a late person to, maybe it's because, Iowa football is not known for their offense, but with Caleb Johnson from Iowa, he's number 3 on PFF's, number 3 on New York Times big board for running backs. 58 overall on PFF, 44 on New York Times. And what I like about him is the more I look into him, he has that similar 3-down skill set and a name that he's been related to, not a current player, but a former player, DeMarco Murray, those zone schemes, one cut.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, maybe a San Francisco in round 2, maybe even depending on where these running backs go, because, they traded Jordan Mason. I think we forget about that when we talk, this offseason, that's one of the underrated moves. So they have CMC still. So again, if Caleb goes to San Fran, this isn't a this year help, but CMC is getting older. Could he be the next guy to come in? I think that'd be an interesting fit. A team like Washington in the second round, if he's still there, I think would be a good fit as well. So Caleb Johnson from Iowa, definitely go on, watch some tape, watch some highlights of his, because like I said, Iowa's not known for being a dominant offense in college football, but he definitely has some juice and could be a fascinating prospect.
Yeah, and what makes him interesting and a 3-down back is that he is 6'1", 224, so he's on the bigger side, but still has a lot of movement, has that one cut ability, has that speed. So that's what makes him a very intriguing piece. And he can almost work on a complement in both ways if they're trying to find somebody that can either be the bruiser or be the finesse guy if you get him into the right system.
Definitely. And then I think after these guys, Caleb, TreVeyon, Quinshawn, Omarion, and Ashton, those 5, we start to get a little bit of a tier break. Not that we see it all the time, undrafted guys, 5th round picks, 7th round picks. Pacheco's 7th round pick. Aaron Jones, a 5th round pick. I can't remember the undrafted guy that used to be good for Seattle for so long. But he was hurt so much. George, that's going to drive me crazy.
Me too.
But you get the point.
Fantasy football darlings too. I feel so bad I'm not remembering his name.
I will think of that. Even like Jalen Warren, right? Like he is proven into a solid back. That's where these next couple guys are. And for a lack of a better way, we have the tight end draft board in fantasy. This is throwing darts, but there's a lot of quality players here. And some people might disagree with this, but the first guy that I would put at this tier break is Cam Skadaboo from Arizona State. Now, PFF and I differ completely on this one. PFF has him as the number 51 overall player, 3rd ranked running back. For me, I don't know if I can trust him to be the true 3-down back. I don't know if he has what he did in the college playoffs. He put, how he put Arizona State on his back and helped, get them into a game they should have won. I don't know if he has the skill set, I hate saying these players aren't athletic because we're talking about NFL players, but the elite of elite athletic skills that you need at running back. But he's going to be a guy that everybody wants on their team. So I think he'll be, I think it's very fascinating. He can go, in my opinion, he can go in 2nd round. He can go 4th, 5th round. Like, I think he's going to be a really fascinating name to watch. But he does have, the teammate, the mantra of, the football player. He has really good balance and breaking ability. Just lacks some of that speed that you need, but he does have good hands for that as well. So Cam Skadaboo is a name that's definitely interesting to watch.
Chris Carson.
Thank you. Chris Carson.
And I feel like there's actually I don't exactly know size, he might have been bigger, but I feel like there's a decent comparison between where he and Chris Carson could end up being.
Yeah, I mean, Scadaboo is a little small. He's only 5'11", 215 pounds. So he's built like a wrestler. Like
Yeah.
he has that good low to the ground force. Like not like
Jalen Warren's actually the comparison on NFL.com scouting reports, which if that gives you an idea.
Yeah, so Scadaboo reminds me a lot of Blake Corum that came out, was it last year or 2 years ago from Michigan? And Blake Corum has had some decent games. Scadaboo, like I said, I think Scadaboo will be a solid player. I just don't know if he'll ever get to that upper echelon of elite running backs. He might be like a 4 or 5 year. I don't know if he'll ever get that second contract. Hopefully, I'm wrong. Hopefully these guys
you're
get
wrong.
paid.
And I mean, he's probably best or second best running back name in these guys. So I hope he's successful for that reason too. He's up there with Judkins.
Yeah, I mean, there is some great names. The next guy on our list, though, to talk about is Mr. Miami Dolphin, Dylan Sampson.
Yep, that's exactly what I thought when I looked at the scouting report.
I mean, just a speeder. Well, he does on the field. He is a speeder. Explosive plays. Just another super fast guy. He would pair. Maybe they want to go in a different direction, and because they did draft. Why am I blanking on his name? I'm so on these prospects. I'm forgetting the rookies from last year. But Mostert is gone. They have Achane, who is fast. Jalen Wright, I believe it is.
Jalen Wright. Yep.
So they might not need a third super fast option. Maybe they want to go for that power back. But Dylan Sampson definitely has the juice. He is a little bit on the smaller side, only at 200 pounds, 5'11". So that is one concern when he comes to the running back position. But with that speed, you hope that he can become at least a passing option out of the backfield. Could be also really fun in a team like Baltimore. Pair him with Derrick Henry, little true thunder and lightning. You kind of saw what they did with Keaton Mitchell, get someone with a little bit more explosiveness since
Justice
Mitchell
Hill
hasn't.
too. Like Justice Hill had a pretty solid season last year.
Yeah, so that he's going to be a fascinating name to watch. And again, these running backs can go anywhere from round 2 to round 5 or 6 because the true volume of running backs that are in this class.
Oh yeah, no, he is. I've seen comparison Brian Westbrook. That's a fantastic comparison. Those smaller pass catching guys. Darren Sproles.
New York Times compared him to Tony Pollard. So
I think he's a little smaller than Tony Pollard, but probably pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, Tony Pollard is undersized too. He just feels bigger, but he is an undersized guy. But speaking of Tony Pollard, one of the best running backs in the league, according to Cam Ward, playing video games, saying Calvin Ridley's number 1, Traylon Burks is number 4, Spears and Pollard. I think we know where he's going.
Yeah, I think so. I think you can pretty much lock that one into your mock draft for next week. So I wouldn't be mad at you there.
Yes. All right. Another name to look here on. We're going to talk about is a name that PFF is a lot lower on, but the New York Times is much higher on, and that is Jordan James from the University of Oregon. And we're on the East Coast. Oregon games, they don't start till 10 o'clock most times, so they're kind of hard to pay attention to. So I had to do a little more deep diving. Again, another undersized guy, not as undersized as Sampson. He's only 208 pounds, but he is 5'10". So we'll go on from there. But overall, just a well-rounded guy. He reminds me of a player like an Aaron Jones. Might take a year or two to really break out. Maybe he fades out and doesn't become of anything. But Jordan James, I think with the right situation, overall well-rounded player, and someone that could push for early starting roles as a 5th-round pick.
Now, he's that undersized bowling ball kind of player where it's like you see him and you don't expect him to be able to run through that guy, and he can. Dameon Pierce kind of player. And I mean, hopefully he has more success long-term than Pierce, but that kind of guy.
Yeah, and I do think it's very interesting just for comparison too about how these running backs are viewed. So I just told you Jordan James is higher on the New York Times big board. He is currently the 77th overall prospect in the top 100 rank. PFF has him at 247.
So this is going to be the one where it's like you get into round 2 and you're like, if a GM really likes him, he wouldn't be shocked if he went round 2. You also wouldn't be shocked if he went round 7.
Yeah. And maybe round 2 is even too high. Maybe we're talking 3rd or 4th round, beginning of day 3.
Yeah.
Where are we at with these running backs? I also think, not that we did too much scouting on them, but I do think it's interesting. I talked about the college football game being back, and Donovan Edwards was one of the cover athletes from Michigan. He's PFF's 311th ranked player. Ollie Gordon was one of the fastest players in the game. He is down there, not even ranked that high. So it's interesting that these players that were, high overalls in college isn't translating to prospects in the NFL. So that's just a fun observation I've made with the college football game coming back. And we're Couch GMs. We love to play video games. So, and NCAA is one of my favorites.
Yes, it is. I think we have 2 more.
2 more. And this is we basically used the New York Times top 100 list to break down some guys. Although they didn't have Cam Scatteraboo in it. We knew he was a name that people had recognized. So that's kind of where we're pulling this list from. So again, there could be some other guys that we're not going to talk about. But if you have questions, make sure you shoot us a DM or thoughts, or some of this too, when it comes to fantasy, will depend on when they're drafted and where they're drafted to.
Mm-hmm.
But our last 2 guys, RJ Harvey and from UCF, Trevor Etienne, brother of, why am I blanking on the hit
Travis.
that? Thank you. I was going to say Travis.
It's going to be impossible. And feel free to start picking on some people in drafts next year when tell them to draft Trevor Etienne instead of Travis. Yeah.
You want to draft T Etienne here.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously we'll see who ends up being the better prospect in redraft fantasy coming out next year, depending on if we expect Travis to make a rebound or if Trevor goes to a good fit. But try to pick on some people with the TETN thing.
No, definitely. I think that'd be some fun aspect of it to pay attention to for sure. But just a little bit about RJ Harvey, a quick feet, changing lanes that, spry Darren Sproles, maybe not that quick, but that type of player, 5'8", 205 pounds, could provide some juice and could even potentially bring something into the special teams game as well. And then Trevor Etienne, he doesn't have the pedigree that his brother did, but he is a really good pass catcher, which I think could be an interesting player. I'm going to use the Eagles last year. They drafted Will Shipley, a late riser, high volume pass catcher. Didn't do much this past year. I mean, probably might not turn in anything, but that kind of pass catcher first, running back second, screens, trick plays, third down specialist is kind of what you're looking at with Trevor Etienne, although he is a pretty good pass blocker at 5'9", 198 pounds. So I think he might be able to work his way up because he's, still a young prospect. So not a guy you can rely on early, but could potentially come into something. And he does have pedigree as a brother is in the NFL.
Yeah. And not as much time on the field in college for him than a lot of these backs, I don't think. So that's something you could look at it as he's going to be a raw prospect coming out, or he could be fresh, have a lot left in the legs. But I think the fact that, like you said, he's a pass catching back, but he's also good at pass blocking. He's going to find a place to land in the NFL because there's so many coaches and offensive coordinators out there that want that guy that can both run out on the route and have that pass blocking ability, especially because we're not going away from a lot of teams having 60% pass rates in the NFL.
Yeah. And then one last name, because we were talking about great names, Bashal Tootin from Virginia Tech. Give him a shout out for a cool name, but he has to work on his ball security if he wants to make it in the league. He does have a little bit of a fumbling problem in college. But George, a lot of running backs that are available, however you want to describe it. What teams to you do you think would be the most interesting, or teams to pay attention to that might make the good fits no matter where they draft a running back?
All right. So I think there's a lot of variables here, but they did find a quarterback who's been manageable. I want to see if the Raiders make the jump to get Jeanty, because I think that's probably the first place I'm looking at him going. And I think he's going to get the workload there. I don't think there's any denying that. He would be the best player on that offense pretty much right out the gate. The Cowboys obviously have a spotlight on them when it comes to running backs, because that was the weakest part of their entire team last year. And that's saying something considering they were rough on the defensive side too. Other than that, like, there's some other interesting places you can look at, but like the Steelers, do they take another running back? They have some other problems.
Yeah, I don't think Najee Harris prevents the Chargers from taking one. He's only in there on a 1-year deal.
Yep.
Minnesota doesn't have a ton of picks, but they could be looking at someone in the day 2, day 3 range, because they brought back Aaron Jones, but he's getting a little bit older. Yeah, they traded for Jordan Mason. But more running backs around. JJ McCarthy, as he comes into his own, would be someone to watch. And then Buffalo will be fascinating because they're on the clock to pay James Cook. And if they take a running back early, does that indicate that they might be ready to move on?
Yeah, and then the last team in the first round, we're just talking specifically in the first round, the Chiefs. I don't know if they're going to go running back, because I feel like their smart move would be taking best available offensive linemen, but we've seen crazier. And they are a team that's pretty much well together. They've been in the Super Bowl each of the last 3 years. They can afford to take a luxury pick on trying to get a running back to give them an extra boost.
And I think the Bears are another team to pay attention to, with Ben Johnson coming over. Yes, he reunites with DeAndre Swift, but who is going to be his Jamal Williams, his David Montgomery? Which one of these guys? Could that be a, Caleb Johnson? Could that be a Cam Scattaboo? Could they, do they want something more overall with, and not worry about DeAndre Swift as much and go with honestly, I think Quinshon Judkins makes a ton of sense for them to pair him with DeAndre Swift. But maybe they want the next DeAndre Swift and go with TreVeyon Henderson. So the Bears, I think, are a fascinating name to watch, especially after they bolstered their offensive line so much this offseason.
So if you had to just say, like, hey, pick a dream fit, I'm going to go with, I was throwing it back and forth between Omarion Hampton and TreVeyon Henderson for Dallas. I'm actually going to say Henderson to Dallas, because I feel like there's a chance that 2 might be gone at that point, or they might hold off till the second round to get a running back if some running backs start to go. So I think that would be my dream fit running back, and that would give Dallas a good leg up on that part of their run game that they were missing last year.
Yeah, so I'm going to exclude Ashton Jeanty because I think he's a caliber of his own that make him a dream fit on anywhere he goes.
Yeah.
But Omarion Hampton to the Denver Broncos.
Ooh, I
think is at least a dream fit for fantasy. Guy that has had people compare him to Alvin Kamara. You saw what Sean Payton was able to do with young Alvin Kamara. They don't really have a quote unquote running back as of right now. It's open for, speculation. So I think that would be one of my dream fits, and we'll have to wait and see next week if I made that happen.
We will have to wait and see. Anything else you want to add on the running back position? Anything we've covered so far before we get out of here and tell people to check us out before the draft next week?
How about, speaking of Dynasty, fantasy footballers, I think Jason Moore from there, they tweeted out, which they're always a good follow too, because they're bigger following than us for sure. And they're, pioneers in the space. Noted that the Giants are doing a lot of top 30 visits on running backs. So potential second round guys, like I can't remember which Ohio State guy it was, and there was 2 other ones. But Tyrone Tracy looked promising. They had a little bit of fumbling issues. But if you're in a dynasty league, Jason mentioned, maybe try to shop him before the draft to see if maybe it's nothing. Maybe we're going to see what happens. But that was interesting of note.
With all the needs that they have on that team, I think it's definitely worth noting if they're putting that much emphasis on the running back position. And also with the Giants, we consider not the best front office, probably doing a lot of reactionary moves here after losing Saquon, having that bad press. Now trying to find another running back to fill that space.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting too, this is not running back specific, this is just draft specific. They call them top 30 visits. They're actually no longer. Yesterday was the last day they could have them in, but that doesn't mean that's their top 30 players on the board. It's sometimes they bring in people for medical checks, sometimes they bring in people for character concerns, sometimes they get a head start on players that they don't think are going to be drafted, but they want to target. Be like, hey, we brought you in, you've already seen the facility, come to our team. So just that's a one weird caveat about the NFL draft season. George,
It's like they can pick 30 people.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, the teams picked can have 30 players, 30 prospects come to their facility for an in-person visit during the draft season.
Okay.
So, like a lot of times, like people will come in for medicals. A lot of times, people will come in for character concerns, and then obviously some of them are dedicated to players that they want. So just
probably mostly quarterbacks.
Sometimes it's positions of need. You want to get an up close look at the 3 pass rushers that might be available when you're on the clock, or so on and so on. But George, we got through the running backs.
We did.
Do we want to play Draftle?
Yes.
All right. So if you weren't here last week, we've had game nights here in the past. We like to play games here. We're Couch GMs. We talked about that. We play games all the time. And we played Weddle, which is the NFL version of Wordle, where you try to pick a player. They come out with a draft version for the draft season. Since we're talking draft, let's go through it again. Again, we are not sponsored by Marriott Bonvoy or Hims down there or Rush Casino. We just can't take them off. I don't pay for ad blockers, so you're going to have to do it. Not sponsored by Progressive either. But how this works is we pick a player. It'll tell us the team, the year, the pick they were, the position, and we try to narrow it down to guess the player. George, who are we starting with?
I don't know how far back they go. Let's go CJ Stroud today.
CJ Stroud. And I think we learned last time they still have to be with the team that they were drafted on. And yes. I think it is also offense only. So good news is I see right here, it's higher than 2023. Knowing that we're in 2025, it had to be a last year rookie. And also higher than round 1. So we're looking at round 2, which always makes it difficult. Not a quarterback, probably in the NFC. So that is definitely something to pay attention to here. And so obviously,
do they do defense? Do we figure that out?
I don't think they do defense. I think it's offense only, which does help. But let's see who was a running back drafted last year. Now we're going to do who blank on these names. Who was drafted? They always put us on the spot. You have nowhere to know where to go.
I mean, my first thought was because doing hard mode of Draftle, it's like, oh, it's the position's not lit up, so it's defense. And I was thinking Cooper DeJean because he was a round 2 pick, but he's not. It's not possible. It's not defense.
No,
you had two E's.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. No. Okay. No, it's not.
Yeah. No defense. Offense only.
Second round offense last year.
Second round offense last year. Have to think back to who were some of those players.
How late was Ladd drafted?
Let's try him. I don't think we got the year right.
It's actually not round 2.
So it's third round. Makes it even more difficult for us. And we know it's in the NFC at this point. All right. So now I think the best way to do this is honestly try to think of players at different positions that were rookies and try to get us to which division. And then once we can narrow it down from there, we have 6 more guesses left. Kind of play the game a little bit because it is those later round guys. And you're trying to think of your dynasty plays and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go Spencer. Oh, we know it's not a quarterback. I was going to say Spencer Rattler. I know he was a later round quarterback, but he wasn't in there.
If you want to make the guess because we have the space to see if we can get the division locked down, I'm okay with it.
Or I know it's going to be too late, but we'll at least get something out of it with Will Shipley because we talked about him earlier. So we know it's a running back. We know it was a round 3 running back last year. We know
In
it's
the
in
NFC,
but not
not
the East. So we're looking for round 3 running backs. Last year was Mr. Blake Corum that we were talking about earlier. He was round 3.
And it is the NFC West.
Okay.
But
What?
not the Rams.
Who is Isaac Guerrero?
That's got to be no. Oh,
maybe I just know how to spell the name.
ISAA.
Okay, it is not
So
Isaac
that's
Guerrero.
no.
So we're looking at either the Cardinals, which that would be Trey Benson.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
It was Trey Benson. There we go.
Look at that. A running back on Draftle on running back day on the Couch GMs podcast. And we got through that pretty quickly. Worked through that methodically. Way to go on us. But George, we are 1 week away from the NFL draft. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
Man, no. I mean, I'm excited to see where the future is going to go, but I think I just want to save our talk for next week.
Alrighty. I think that is my cue to hit the music. As a reminder, typically we're on Thursdays. Podcast Wednesday. There will be trades involved. It'll be a great time. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you hit subscribe, like us, follow us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, TikTok, all those good places. I'm Cody Roadcap. That's George Kurth. Beans, the cat, is right over here. And we will talk to you all next week.